when
was he shooting? What was this?
I don't know what he was doing. Hey, you guys, happy Wednesday. Thanks for joining us. I've got my dear friend Duffy with me again tonight. And we've talked to Duffy before about sexology.
Mm-hmm.
But tonight, Duffy has been doing some really cool things that I thought would be awesome to share with you. And it's learning about two things: life between lives, and then doing some past life regression that she did on her own.
Mm-hmm.
And so she's going to talk to us about that in just a minute. I want to share with you, though, and remind you that we are going to the Caribbean, and that's November 26th with Royal Caribbean Cruise Line. We're going to have a great time, and so you're coming, right? Yeah.
Yeah. If I'm a little late, go ahead and start without me. Okay.
Duffy. Okay, you guys, we have not been drinking tonight, honestly. We just haven't seen each other for a while. So anyways, please get on the website and take a look at the cruise. You know that I'm going to be with the one and only James Van Prague again in November. I was on Hay House Radio Show with him yesterday. We had a great time. Our subject was spontaneous healing.
Great.
And if you guys missed it, one of my greatest stories, you'll be interested in this, was I have a young lady that was coming to see me because she couldn't sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did her family background, it turns out that her grandmother is a Holocaust survivor.
Oh.
So I said to her, through your DNA, you're suffering from post-traumatic stress.
Exactly.
And she went light bulb on.
Mm-hmm.
Next time she came to see me, she was sleeping.
Yeah.
It was a spontaneous healing. She didn't even know. Once the brain got the information, the spirit.
What we're going to be talking about is how that can carry through.
How it carries through. And lastly is, oh my gosh, do you know any of these ladies? Oh my gosh, you guys. Well, you guys know that Courtney Long was here. And do you know Courtney, Duff?
I've met her.
Oh my God, you look in this child's eyes. Well, she's a child to us.
Yeah.
And I mean, she is just a beautiful soul. Like, she's the real deal, this kid. Then Dr. Melanie Shreenan, who is been certified by both Greg Brayton and Joe Dispenza to represent their work, which is pretty big accomplishment.
Yes, nice.
Doctor of Psychology.
Mm-hmm.
But besides all that, just a plain old-fashioned nice lady. Deborah Stengel, who is an interesting gal that was an attorney who is now practicing spirituality and does some really cool things with people in Sedona, where she's teaching how to be in the now, but it's much more than that. And then Melinda Vail, right?
Never seen it before in my
life. Okay, so that's enough of that. So life between life. And by the way, guys, if you have a question for either Duffy and I tonight, 602-875-0444. And we're happy to answer questions. So you've taken a little segue.
Well, I've taken a little segue because what I found out, even through sexology, that a lot of things that are going on with us today and throughout our lives are carryovers. Some of them from our earlier childhood, some of them from past lives. So I don't do anything with my clients that I don't do for myself, and so I started to explore this more and more and more. And so I went ahead and went up. I do an awful lot of reading anyhow, and there are a number of books if you are interested in it. One by it's Robert Schwartz, and let's see, and the other was by Dr. Michael Newton, who started finding out about life between life, and it's really being in the spirit world. And what they talk about is how we, in a way, plan our lives. We have our pre-life planning. Now, it doesn't mean that everything is going to be set in stone, because when we come into this life, we have free will. But we have things that we bring with us that we want to get through. Karma is kind of that way. If you were really a mean-ass person in the other life, and you were, let's just say you were a slave owner and you were mean, in this life you may come back and be the opposite, not necessarily a slave, but somebody in a lower caste system, so you can learn compassion. You can learn what it's like to be, have somebody treat you the way you treated somebody else, in a way. So that's the karmic aspect. It's not so much with the one person as it is for you to learn that emotion, for you to get rid of that emotion and learn that lesson. So in the soul world, as they talk about it, we are all that. We are just souls. We're basically pure love. And there is no caste system. There is no one better than the other. It's really learning how to go through life here, learn our lessons, so we can elevate ourselves. We can become higher in whatever we want to do, so we don't have to come back and learn the lessons. It's so interesting and so fascinating to do that. So whenever you do, Mindy has done past life regressions for a long time. I've done.
That's
past
my
life.
nickname, everybody.
I'm sorry, Melinda. I'm sorry, Melinda. Melinda has done past life regressions.
Maybe they didn't know who Mindy was.
Okay,
You know? Remember, I divorced Mark a long time ago, and I'm marrying Billy.
Right.
So.
That's why. Oh, you're the one. Okay. So, but yeah, so Melinda has done past life regressions. I've done past life regressions for clients. And then take them into a place where you can try to really find out what your purpose is. Why are you attracted to the same type of person all the time? Why do you meet somebody? Melinda and I met the first time after she was on my husband Pat's show, Pat McMahon. And we walked up.
Third time. It was the third time that I was on his show.
Mm-hmm.
First time I was on his show, I was with a pack of what I call Fruit Loopers and Windchimers. Mm-hmm. And there were several of us that were there together. Mm-hmm. And I walked away from that show thinking that Pat didn't like me at all.
Yeah, and Pat came home and said, we had these people on. He says, but you've got to meet this one lady. She is absolutely amazing.
And then his producer called me and said, Pat would like you back. And then I was like, Sally
really?
Field.
Yeah.
He liked me. He really liked me. So then I went back. And then the third time he said,
my wife would really like to meet you. Now, I don't do that with people. Maybe I just don't care about anybody, I don't know. I've never said, I really want to meet this person. But I told Pat, I really want to meet her. I had watched her on the show. So went down, we started talking, and it's as if we knew each other our whole life.
It was an immediate connection. We sat at the time in the studio, their green room was just a little round wooden table and 3 chairs around it. And we sat there. And
we didn't quit talking, and then we decided we're going to start working together and doing some different things.
She moved right into my office building within, I don't know, maybe a month or
less than that.
Very close after we met.
We met. So it was that type of immediacy, and which has happened to me several times in my life. And for me, as a service brat, not keeping a lot of people in my life over a period of time, I don't know kids that I grew up with.
Well, and then in truth, you had a very best friend that passed away from cancer, and now it had really affected her to be put a little wall around her as far as relationships were concerned.
Big wall. It was,
and we became we became instant family. But I have to tell a little extra story about this too, because I didn't realize we were going to go into this at all. But after I had met your husband for the first time, I was meditating and I visualized that you guys were at my house for Thanksgiving. Remember me telling you that? And I thought, why the hell would the McMahons be at my house for Thanksgiving? And I'll tell you, ever since she moved into the office, we've been together every Thanksgiving since for I don't know how many years. But it was so to further that story, not only did she feel the connection, but once we'd met, then I felt the connection and could see our family tie.
Right. Well, when I first saw Pat when I was 18 years old, and he was emceeing a rock concert in Poco and Three Dog Night. This was a long time ago, and so
one is the loneliest number.
Yes, and so my girlfriend and I walking along, and she's, there's Pat McMahon. He was on Chris Radio and all this kind of stuff, Wallace and Loud Motion at the time. I said, yeah, I'm going to marry him one day. Have no idea why I said it. And when I hired him to do a speaking engagement, that time I was with the phone company, my boss was on his show, and he called because of a phone problem. And we talked and talked and talked. And we actually talked on the phone for 6 months before we ever met each other.
That's cool.
Yeah.
As opposed to what Billy and I did, which was
right,
hello, I love you, would you tell me your name?
Okay. So I have friends that I have felt that way about, that I know that they are a part of my life. that they need to be. So I was up in Sedona, and I was doing past life regression up there. We had one done on me. And Melinda, several times. Yeah.
And that, and the whole long point of the story is to tell you how then she found out. How long have we been friends now? Like Amanda was 21.
Yeah.
So she was 19.
Yeah.
And she's going to be 36.
Yeah.
So how many years that is,
yeah,
okay?
So,
but this past week, last week, 2 weeks ago, she found this out.
Well, I did past life reading, and so one of them I was a young black man in Africa, and
Regression.
I did regression, yes. Yeah. So it was past life regression, and Melinda was my mother in that life, and it was interesting because my mother was a seer. She was able to see, not only see spirits, but she was more of a fortune teller. She was for our tribe, for our group, she was the one that could see things that would be happening, and she was the one that everybody would go to. So she was that. I did past life where my sister today was my grandmother in another life. Pat was my sister in another life. He was my father in another life. So Pat and I think you and I have been in so many lives together, and so you kind of find that out doing the past life regressions. But we end up doing the soul regression, which was a very unique thing because it takes you at the end of your life and how after you pass away, going out of body, looking at what happens, the trip going into the spirit world, what did you see there. And it was very, very interesting because my spirit guide came and got me, and it was a very easy trip. I said, it just looks like I'm in kind of an opaque stocking, and it was just...
That's an interesting description.
Yeah, because it wasn't clear, and it was like, whenever you've been in an airplane and you just see the clouds all around you, that's kind of what it was like. And getting to a place to where I saw all of these lights. And then when the lights came up and got closer, there was my soul group. And your soul still remains part of your soul still remains in the spirit world, even though we're in this life.
Absolutely.
So when I got there, Pat was there. My friend Steve was there. Melinda was there. My mom, my dad, a lot of people were there. And so in talking about what was done, what I was supposed to learn in that life, did I accomplish it? And on some of the lives I look back on, yes, I did. Some of it I didn't, and you bring it into this life because you have unfinished business, or you've learned aspects in another life that you want to bring and then help others. And so you make agreements whenever you go into your life planning for coming back into the physical realm here, of what it is that you want to do. And the good and the bad you will plan on. You need to learn this lesson so somebody who is a soul in your soul group or a soulmate will agree. They will come in and they will be this antagonist for you. So to help you be able to learn whatever it is that you want to accomplish.
Honoring the jackasses in your life because they're your greatest teachers.
Exactly.
So an interesting question here that I think we kind of answered, but there's a couple of things I want to add. And the question is, besides swimming with the dolphins and delphides and being burned at the stake, where do you see the past life connection with you, Duffy, and the angels? So that's an interesting question, and actually a cute question, and it's signed keeping a low karmic profile tonight, so we won't reveal who asked the question. But there's a couple of things that occur to me. First of all, I want to address the connection with angels, because in like-mindedness, we connect together when we're working on the same pathway, on the same program from heaven. So when Duffy talks about life between lives, you as angels all might be part of the same soul group or part of the same soul school who agreed to come down to the planet at this particular time and work with your spirit to learn the different kinds of things that we're talking about in our angel group. So that's one thing. Duffy did explain that she found out who I was to her in a past life, but I want you to understand that when you have a karmic profile with someone, even if it's your bestie, so to speak, That doesn't mean that Duffy and I, for all of these years, okay, have had 100% smooth sailing. And I think that's an important thing to address. What we have done is that we've made a commitment to each other at a deep soul level that she feels, that I feel, that no matter what, we stay connected. Now, there are some people that go in and out of your lives, including siblings sometimes, actually.
A lot of times.
Okay? And then there are some people that you just stick with through thick and thin, even if you're pissed off at them. And she's been pissed off at me, and I've been pissed off at her.
Well, it's kind of like a marriage. It's a relationship, and I talk about relationships a lot, especially within the sexology. And within relationships, Pat and I have been together. We just celebrated our 33rd anniversary.
Happy anniversary.
Thank you. And we still are talking to each other, and we still actually like each other at times.
Well, she rolls her eyes at him, though. I have to tell you, I watch it. I watch it across the booth at the table. Okay?
Okay, all right. So, but it's the same type of thing. Just because that you are in a same soul group, or you are soulmates, or you are whatever you happen to be, does not necessarily mean that you're going to get along so well that everything is going to be absolutely wonderful. No, that's not the purpose. Not the purpose of being in the human form either.
Exactly. And so you actually are required at a karmic level to release the toxic people out of your life. People who are toxic and you put up with, and you have a high tolerance of abuse, that's creating bad karma for you, because you're supposed to be here on the planet to move into enlightenment, to love, to connection with soul, self, and source. And if indeed you stay in a situation where you're with a toxic person, it prevents you from doing that. But that doesn't mean that you don't have ups and downs in all relationships, including friendships, including people that you've been in past incarnations with. So
we still have free will, and we're still all individual personalities.
Right.
So you bring your personalities into kind of this life, and they blend in from previous lives that you've had. So you look at that.
I've had some amazing past life regressions with people and what they've discovered from within themselves, and levels of understanding. One of the most interesting regressions that I ever did was with someone who was born with a birth defect, and it bothered him very much. He was a bit of a ladies' man, and also a bit of a homophobic person. And so we went to see from his past life where the birth defect came from. And it turns out in a past life that he was gay. And he had refused to do something with that energy, and it was all done very covertly, and I could go on and on. But it was so interesting because as soon as he discovered that, he realized that in his vibrational frequency, the reason he held such homophobic gay prejudice was simply because he still held on to fear from that past life.
And you bring in that fear into this particular life. You also may bring in the aspect of that, I want to have a disability because I need to learn this from it.
Or somebody around me does.
Yes,
right. And I got to tell you
nobody wants to hear that this is something you planned.
Yes, that you planned. I have to tell you one more that was so interesting. I had a psychiatrist come to see me once, who was the most lovely man. I mean it. Oh my God, Duffy. He had the most wonderful energy. He was sweet and kind. He really loved what he was doing. But he said to me, I just know I was something bad in a past life, and I got to clear it. Well, how do you know that? He said, I just know. Well, we found out that in a past life, he had been a Spanish conquistador. And he was in southern Florida, and he saw himself on a horse chopping heads off of the natives. And he cried in my chair at just such a deep soul level. Like, it wounded him so much to see that he had been that. And as soon as we got done with the regression, it kind of shifted and cleared it for him. He was so evolved that he knew that he had to clear out the lifetime in which he was an abuser. And in every lifetime, there's different lessons and roles that we want to learn. Sometimes we're victims, sometimes we're victimizers, sometimes we're neither nor. There's just all kinds of things that we need to learn.
And then if you also go into life between lives, you may find that you're in a different planet too. That there are other aspects, other planes that you can go to besides Earth. And what they will say on the soul, in the soul plane, is that this is one of the harder areas to come because of we have a very violent society, and so it's sometimes very difficult to learn what we need to learn, mainly because of that. We have so many outside influences that will change what our direction may be based off of, again, free will, and that presents a problem.
So, question, what about language bleed through? It's where you speak a language with very little or no exposure to it. Have you ever known anybody that can do that?
I've actually run into people that could all of a sudden are speaking some language that they don't speak.
Did you know that Amadeus Bill does that? Bill can speak Spanish. He can speak little Spanish, but not very well. He speaks German with a perfect German accent fluently, and has never had any exposure to the language.
Yeah, you will pick it up, because if you are regressed, you may end up coming back and speaking that particular language as much as far back as even speaking Sanskrit has happened.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
I never heard of that.
Yeah.
So what about a couple of these authors? Are you familiar with Raymond Moody,
yes.
Dick Sutphin, Brian Weiss?
All of them.
So
I've read them. I read them since I was a kid.
Right. So these are some suggested authors for you guys on some past life stuff and some life in between life stuff, and that's Raymond Moody, Dick Sutphin, Brian Weiss. Did you ever read that book that Dick Sutphin did about Taylor Caldwell? It was such an interesting book. It's this interesting book, you guys. Taylor Caldwell was an author that wrote Dear and Glorious Physician. And Dick Sutphin was an author that was very interested in Edgar Cayce's material, because Edgar Cayce used to give readings through the Akashic Records and the subconscious mind. And he would talk a great deal about what I believe are the origins of the human race on this planet would be, Atlantis. And so Edgar Cayce, who, those of you who don't know, was considered the sleeping prophet. He was from West Virginia in the 1930s, and he's worth looking up. And Dick Sutphin did a lot of writing about him. But Taylor Caldwell had written this Dear and Glorious Physician book, and it's really about St. Luke, who, in my understanding, is someone that wrote about Christ, but years after Christ had died. So he's not like with the Matthew, Mark, and John. He's Luke somewhere, later. And so she wrote this book, and had really precise and concise information. And Dick Sutphin had this idea that he was going to send her to a hypnotherapist and see what her past life was. So in this book, in her past life, she is Mary Magdalene. And she gives such precise information about that era, that period of time, and so on. It's such a fascinating book. At the end of the book, and I mean, you're spellbound by this book, because there's no way this woman could have made this stuff up, really. At the end of the book, at the very end, she renounces and says she doesn't believe in any of it. And he put her objections in the book. Fascinating book. Dick Sutphin.
What you should do, because everybody's going to have their own sense of what is right and what is wrong and how that they feel about it. And that's the only thing you can do. You have to look at it from your own
It's all about feeling. You. It's all about you. So we have a question from Lucy tonight. My question: do we bring lessons learned from past lives into this one?
Oh, yes.
And no.
And no. We don't always, but we will bring lessons in, and we can also unlearn them in this life too. We can have things happen. We may have learned a lesson in a past life. We may bring that lesson, maybe compassion, maybe a number of things, into this life. But because of what goes on in this life, something may happen that turns you away from that lesson learned. And that has to do with free will. That has to do with being in the human body.
I think sometimes, from the way my experience, because I've been doing this work now for
30 years.
I don't know, long time. I think sometimes the lessons that we've learned from a past life are there at a deep soul level, but our ego still can entrap us in repeating the lesson.
Well, that's the biggest problem is the human ego, and that is what entraps us a lot. Of saying, okay, well, I know this at a soul level, but ego gets in the way, and that's a big problem that we have in our society, is that we are a society of egos.
Oh, well, geez, Louise, I don't know, you guys. Are you watching the Facebook right now? I don't. I'm stunned into some place that I don't even believe or want to go. You know, the shooting that happened, and we all send prayers out to the families. And there was another shooting this afternoon in San Francisco, I believe, but I think that was the workplace. But this, I guess, might have been politically motivated. I don't know. But what I wrote on my Facebook is about, this isn't about politics. This is about a world running amok and people crazy, no matter which side of the aisle they are, and going crazy with it. And I do so hope that we all come together and
ego is based
talk
off
about
of
love
fear.
and not fear.
Yeah, ego is based off of fear, and so you have to look at it that way. So when our egos run amok, it's our fear is really becoming more controlling than anything else. So everything is a reaction. So we are not really learning.
We're really at a pivotal time right now in soul growth and world growth that we better get our crap together.
But there's a lot of soul growth going on. The biggest problem we have, no offense, and we're on it, is the internet and media, because it's so easy to get on the internet and write things that are horrific and hurtful and so forth,
and bully people,
and not take responsibility for it. It's just out there. And no offense, in my book, that's quote unquote chicken shit, but that's just me. Can I say chicken shit on this? Okay. But anyhow, it really is. If you're not going to take responsibility for what that you say and what that you are doing, there's a problem there. That you can put anything out there that you want to, but you don't have to own it. Well, and I find that to be problematic in our society, because too many people are doing it.
So when we talk about karma and karmic profiling, past life and everything, one of the things that Greg Braden teaches a lot about is fractal time, or history repeating itself. And so what I find in today's world so interesting is this cannot be a fractal on this planet, because this is the first time that our electronics have been to this level of being able to do Facebook and internet and Twitter and FaceTime and all of these things. This is our first time on this planet to have this. So is it a fractal time from another planet that we've all evolved here and we exploded that planet and we screwed it all up with this, and so now we had to start all over again, and we've evolved from the caveman and we're in a fractal time where this is it?
If we look at time as not being linear, everything is happening at the same time, no matter what, in the future now. So we have this in the future. Now, and we may not have had the past, but it has been part of our timeline.
Somehow it's got to be fractal. That's what I know. But I don't know how. That's an interesting question. So
is it coming back from the future?
Well, it could be coming from the future. It could be intergalactically if we talk about life on other planets. I don't know. I do believe there's got to be something out there, although I don't believe in some of the crazy stuff that people talk about with ETs and so on.
Lucy said that she has a friend that believes that she died in a car crash in a prior life and is tentative about driving. That happens a lot. I know people that have a fear of flying that have never been in a plane before, but the thought of it scares them to death. And you take them back, you'll find out that they were in a plane crash, and that can be part of it. I had a fear of the ocean, even though I've been on the ocean, but just a huge respect for it. I would go out and I'd play, but I found out that I was a sailor and drowned in another lifetime. So it's that type of thing. So I think you do carry those fears with you.
Carry many imprints. I had a client once, Lucy, who was unable to even put her face in the shower. That was how afraid of water she was. And it was through a past life regression. Actually, she had 3 lifetimes in which she drowned, that we were able to clear that energy for her. And then she actually not only was able to stick her face in the shower, but she was swimming and everything afterwards.
Yeah.
So those are really good questions, because yeah, absolutely we do pull things in from a past incarnation. Talk to us, Duff, about your study on life between life.
Well, that's where we go back and we really do talk about what we plan for our lives. We have our soul groups. We have the ability to go back and we look at the Akashic records. We have mentoring through souls that have evolved more than we have, older souls. So whenever we're in that life between life, we can look back at past lives and say, okay, this was. There is no good or bad in the soul. Where there is no shaming. There is none of the aspects that we have on earth. Whether you have been a bad person or whether you've been a good person in our judgment, there are no judgments in the soul life. Those they have said that those that have committed a lot of atrocities, they don't go straight back into the soul grouping. They'll go to an area so they can basically rehabilitate and get their soul back together, because the act of hurting, killing, or maiming, or being just an awful person hurts the soul so much that it has a hard time recuperating from it. So there's an area where they go to try to get the souls to rejuvenate.
So what you're saying is that someone who is a perpetrator has huge trauma in the perpetration.
Right. Yeah. And a lot of times after death, they're afraid to go into the soul area because of what they've done. So they will stay in, I guess, say no man's land, if you want to call it that, in between earth and the soul plane, because they cannot get out of their head that they will not be judged. So they stay in this area.
Where does sociopathy come in with that? Someone that doesn't have a conscience.
Wow. That's a really good question. Because I've often wondered about this and talking about the souls. Because whenever I've read about what they say about the souls and the soul grouping, the soul will enter the body after, of course, the point of birth, after when the fetus is normally between 3 months to full term, that the soul.
Spirit has always told me at the 4th month.
Yeah.
Which I found interesting when Amanda was pregnant, because she came into my office that 4th month of pregnancy, said, "Mama, I felt my baby's soul today." Mm-hmm. And I had never told her that Spirit told me that, but that's interesting. Go ahead.
They say after the first trimester, because before the 4th trimester, mm-hmm. Before the trimester, the baby's neurological abilities, the nerve endings, the brain is not capable of having them interact with. So the soul has to come into the body and interact with it to basically mesh, to become symbiotic with it. And so it can still become symbiotic and still leave and come back during that whole time. But very rarely does it come in before then, because it's too hard on the soul to be able to stay there. Mm-hmm. So that's why they talk about that. It will sometimes be as late as right before birth. And from what I have read and what they say is that there are times too when the soul cannot mesh with the human body, and so the soul will then leave right before.
Is that what causes miscarriage or stillborn?
That can be, that can be stillborn. It can be miscarriage, but it can also be that lack of soul. To me is the basis of sociopathic behavior.
Oh, that's interesting.
I mean, that's just a thought
so
on mine.
So are you saying that people with sociopathy are born without a soul?
Yeah, that's how I would see it, because they have no sense of anything. That's Bijou over here, by the way. So she wants to lay down. So
everybody, there's Pat McMahon.
Pat McMahon. Wave, Pat.
Hi, Pat McMahon.
Hello. Excuse me. I'm here as the veterinarian.
So anyhow,
But isn't that so? Let me ask you this question, because this is an interesting something that honestly, you guys, I haven't really worked on, talked to, or listened to Spirit about at all. But wouldn't it be part of the karmic plan or part of the plan, life between life, to come down as a sociopath? And what happens to the soul that would be that person?
I don't think that is a plan, because souls are basic love. So for souls to come down with the plan of being not really having any conscience, not really having anything, I can't even imagine that aspect of it. To me, somebody that is born as a psychopath, a sociopath, or whatever.
Because not all sociopaths are psychopaths, right? You know, there is a book called The Sociopath Next Door, which says that, you know, there's a few sociopaths running around the planet that don't turn to psychopathic behavior.
Well, yes and no. They have some sort of psychopathic behavior almost all the time. They can. So, it's a sociopath.
A God mistake.
Oh, okay, good. She says, is a sociopath a God mistake? No. I don't see how it can be a God mistake, because humans, we still have the humans that are of the earth. The souls connect with the humans for us to have souls for us to learn. To me, again, I don't think God makes mistakes. First of all, whatever happens when you come into this world is going to be either a plan of some sort. But to me, if a soul is not there, if you have no feeling, no conscience, no anything, then to me that's a lack of a soul. So I have no idea, since I've never really read anything about the aspect of a sociopath or a psychopath and coming into.
Why don't you guys weigh in on this and call us at 602-875-0444?
But again, you have what you consider to be psychopaths. You have somebody like a Ted Bundy, who came into this. Now, did he was charismatic? He has all kinds of aspects that went on for him because he was charming. He had all these different attributes, but he had no compulsion. He had no sense of anything when it came to hurting or maiming or killing or whatever. A Jerry Dahmer, any of these type of people. Now, did they have, was that part of their plan? I can't even imagine it, but I know that they had talked about plans.
Well, couldn't their plan be a catalyst for growth for others?
Yeah,
I mean, Spirit has always told me that Hitler was just as metaphysical as Jesus, because he convinced a whole lot of people to follow him like Jesus did, even though what people were following was, you know, inappropriate. But there was a lot of learning and different aspects of what happened.
But not to give Hitler any type of attributes. Hitler also did a lot of good for Germany before he became the Hitler that we know of. He took a nation that had been devastated by war and built it back up. So he did both good and bad. You have somebody like Jerry Jones, the same thing, you know.
But isn't that the point of the third dimensional frequency, is the duality, the fact that we all have potential in our souls to do good and bad, because we have the diversity between the ego and the spirit. So I would imagine that at some level there's got to be some soul connection to even those who are psychopathic or sociopathic.
And that's a huge aspect of what that you learn about in your soul life, is that balance of getting to where that is. And
it's just like my psychiatrist. He was a terrible, one might say he was a sociopath in his past life, although I think he was doing what soldiers did in the day, and he kind of knew it in his soul in this life. I don't know. It's an interesting question. You guys ought to weigh in on it. We've got another question here.
Because what about savants in past lives? There's been savants throughout history, and so I believe that you can carry that through. If you were Mozart was supposedly a savant. He could start playing the piano when he was 4 years old. There are kids like that today that have been able to do it. So there's an aspect to what it is that they want to bring forth with them into this life. It might be the ability to play an instrument. It might be a sports ability. It might be a mathematical ability. It could be almost anything. I think that is part of one of the what you can say. I want to be able to have this or work towards this in the next life.
I think there's an imprint.
Mm-hmm.
One of Duffy's past lives was about me being a shaman in a tribe as her mother, or the person that was the seer.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think there's been an imprint in my soul that's part of the role that my soul has taken in various lives, good, bad, or indifferent, sometimes good, sometimes bad, sometimes indifferent. So I think there's an imprint certainly in each soul that, is a leftover imprint. And sometimes savants come in with a bigger imprint or a bigger connection to whatever it was from the past that they became.
And we also have to take into the fact that they still have a genetic DNA that plays part in who we become as humans. Part of my traits, I've been a mediator in so many lives. I try to get things to balance out. I try to get people to get along. I don't like violence. So in the life that we were in together, I was the son of the tribal chief, and as I got older, my aspect was the fact that the act of killing somebody was so antithetical to me that when I had to kill a man that killed my father, it hurt me. That still carries over. That I have a heart. I don't like to kill a bug. So doing anything that is violent to me is something that is antithetical to my character.
So many people that talk about near-death experiences, and there's books written about past lives and so on, talk about a life review. What's your opinion about getting a life review as you cross over?
Well, the life review is not a matter of saying, oh, you did this right or this wrong. It's saying, did you learn? And yes, if you go back and what they had talked about in the books that I've read, and the ones that I've read have actually been just compilations from the hypnosis from the people themselves. And so they talk about the life reviewer going in front of the council, and the council will say, you did wonderful things, this. There is no judgment, there is no animosity, there is no you should have or you shouldn't have. Again, you have led this life. What did you learn? Did you learn what you were supposed to do? You and I you did a past life with me, and got me to, at the end of my life, saying, did you do what you were supposed to do?
Mm. It's part as a hypnotherapist for when you're doing past life regression to, see what imprints have carried over, to see what lessons were learned, to see what, repeating patterns there were. There's a book called The Cryon Material by a guy named Lee Carroll, and there's a part of that book, it's called The Lesson of Wu, which is the most interesting view of what a life review would be. And I will have that sent to all of you tomorrow, The Lesson of Wu, so that you can read that, because it's a very interesting idea of what a life review would be. Because in this lesson of Wu is leaving his body, and his spirit guides are there, and they're taking him into a giant hallway, and down the hallway are different doors. And on the doors have different words like love or abundance, or different words. And Wu is asking, and in this thing, Lee says that Wu is a male but could be known as a man. No, Wu is a man but could be known as a Wu man for woman. Like he's not he's talking about genderless energy, right? But anyway, so then Wu is asking his spirit guides, what does these doors mean? And the spirit guides say, well, this was your door of abundance, should you have chosen to open it. And this was your door of love, should you chosen to have opened it. So really, the lesson of Wu is talking about the fact that your life review is not about anyone else judging you, but rather about you looking at whatever role you took and whatever lessons you did and did not learn. I think that what I have discovered in doing past life regression with people is that it's never what someone does and failed at that they regret. It's always about what they didn't choose to do.
Yeah.
So,
And choice really is the operative word. We can choose in the morning to be angry all day. We can choose to be in a bad mood. We can choose. These are our choices that we can do. So again, when we look at our life, what did we choose to do? How did we choose to be? And that's part of what you learn out, and part of the lifelong view that you get of yourself. And you're the one that judges yourself. And we judge ourselves very harshly here.
So, if you don't believe that there's death, and we don't believe that there's death and that life goes on, then how do we take on any idea of what might be a soulless human being? I think we have to let that go.
I think we do too. I think that's a good thing. Again, I think the souls are neither male or female. They're androgynous, and you choose what that you want to be in this life. You can come back as a male. You can come back as a female. You can come back as whatever gender orientation that you want. These are all things that you may decide on because of whatever lessons you want to learn. But again, we all hopefully, again, it's an assumption on our part, because I do believe that everybody has a soul. First time you've ever brought up sociopaths was the first time I've ever thought about that. But at a soul level, getting to know ourselves and starting to take responsibility for the choices that we make, we let the ego get in the way.
So what was the most significant pearl of wisdom that you brought back from doing your journey on your soul research and your past lives and your life between life planning?
Well, one is I'm not supposed to know everything, and that really, really bothered me, that, because I love to have answers. But to clarify things, I had a near-death experience when I was 25. And I asked about that. I said, was I supposed to come back? And my answer was, well, you came back, so it was a choice I made. And in describing what it was like, I don't know if you and I have ever talked about that very much, but I said it was like, again, sitting in between the spirit world and this world, and then watching and then making my decision to come back. I couldn't necessarily put it into any words at that time, but because this was 1975, and this is before Robert Weiss and Moody had written their books.
Right,
so I was, and it was very confusing. Now I lost train of my thought.
The pearl of wisdom. If you could tell us one thing that you thought was the most enlightening piece of doing this kind of work what my understanding from you, Duff, is that you wanted to do this work so that you could add it as part of what you're doing as a practitioner.
In working in sexology, I wanted to find out what has happened in our life and lives today that has caused sex. The one thing that all of us are, and all of us, if it wasn't for sex, we wouldn't be here, that is a major part of our lives.
I can't imagine my parents doing that, so I must have come differently, but
yes.
Go ahead.
Well, immaculate conception happens to the best of us, though. But, so I wanted to find out how we have turned sex into something that is violent, where you subjugate people, where you sell people. It's used as a barter system. It's used as power. All of these things, which is not an aspect of who we are as souls and spiritual souls and sexual souls. And so what I learned is that humans have kind of done this to themselves, that when it comes to the soul and sex, and this is one of the things that threw me the most, is that we have created this sense of violence where we basically make males, females, or anything that is in between combative. We don't
I
come
thought
together.
that was the Democrats and the Republicans.
Well, them too. Them too. They're all combative. So that we come together. We should be, when we come together as two souls, we come together in love. I'm not talking about marriage. I'm not talking about girlfriend. But when we come together as two souls, we should come together in love, because that's what souls are. And when it comes to the sexual aspect, and you still come together, the energy of sexual energy and spiritual energy are the same energies. So we need to be able to see that in a different manner and not use people the way that we have been. And I don't care whether you're married, whether you're girlfriend, boyfriend, or whether you're strangers. We come together as souls. We should see each other as souls, as loving people. But we have learned over the millennia to literally be afraid of anything that is different from us. So this person walking towards me, instead of seeing this person as another soul, our first inclination is to be afraid. I don't think that's how we're supposed to be as souls or humans. I think we need to be able to embrace differences. I think we need to be able to embrace newness.
So many metaphysicians, Duffy, talk about people who've had multiple sex partners carrying the energy from one partner to the other.
Yep.
And all becoming one big, huge bubble of energy with that person in the center. What's your belief about that? Since I'm a serial monogamer myself,
Yes.
I'd like to know.
I think it depends on each individual and what is.
So you don't think that I'm carrying all the past loves of Melinda into my current marriage?
I think you're carrying the past loves of Melinda into everything. I think you're carrying your whole life into whatever is going to be next for you. You have to, because you learn so much from the past. You learn so much from the people that you've been with, good and bad.
So to me, energy is energy. And the more that you understand the energy that you have put into your soul in this lifetime, and you work through the karmic profile with others, the more that benefits you in current situations, so that you're breaking fractals, breaking issues that have happened, past patterns. But if you haven't worked through them appropriately, then you're carrying that into your current situation and recreating trauma again because you haven't worked through it the first time.
But in working through it, you talked about you've been married several times, serial monogamous. You don't have to be a serial monogamous. You don't have to be married. You can still have a lot of partners. You'll still carry aspects of that into your future with you. Good, bad, and indifferent. If you have, let's say you were a rape victim, okay? There's going to be an aspect of that pattern that you're going to carry with you. It doesn't have to always be the negative. You can learn that rape has nothing to do with sex. You can learn that rape is a sense of power and forcefulness, and not let it affect you on a sensual, spiritual, loving basis. That's the difference. How do you learn from it? With therapy. Well, yeah, no, not by yourself necessarily, but in learning.
So Duffy is doing some really cool new things, you guys. So she's doing her sexology and sexual healing. She's also doing hypnosis, kinesiology, and energy work. And she's got a new phone number, which is 602-910-0215. And she's got some interesting blogs that I want you to be looking for. They're coming out very soon, and they'll be on your website and your Facebook.
Dr. Duffy.
Oh, yes. New website. Everything's new. Dr. Duffy at drduffy.com. And isn't that the coolest thing?
Yeah.
drduffy.com. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah.
And so.
And doctor is spelled out for Dr. DOCTOR, DUFFY.com. That's the website. So we'll be having new things coming out, and just talking about, I talk a lot about what sex and sexuality are. I don't have to get into how it's performed. Enough videos show that. I just talk about the aspect of what sex is, and as long as it's consensual, legal, and safe. That's the most important part.
It's about energy work for you, isn't it? So that's
It
one
is
of
about
the
energy.
reasons for the exploration of past lives, because sometimes we have people, both Duffy and I, who've suffered great sexual trauma as well as other traumas in life. And, we can usually chalk that up to both in life and past life regression therapy.
It's hard to find anybody that has not had a trauma.
Well, a trauma to one child may not necessarily be a trauma to another.
Yeah.
I remember having a client who was horrified and mortified to share a childhood experience with me to the degree where she just couldn't, cough it up. She finally did. And I kind of looked at her. I had the exact same experience happen to me. The difference was the way my father handled it was with a loving connection, and the way her parental unit handled it was with a lot of shame and blame. So, there's and I think, children experiment sometimes sexually with this and that, and a parent's reaction to that can make or break who a person is sexually as an adult.
Yes.
Different religious backgrounds, can certainly affect, where you're at and all of that too. But past lives really are part of trying to figure out who you are at the depth of your soul and understanding it. And so, you don't need to have a therapist to connect to a past life.
No.
You can actually meditate with the goal of seeing what you can find. Now, it's better to have a hypnotherapist because you've got somebody that can ask the right questions, and this is why you went to Sedona and did some of your work there. Duffy and I have done. I was just going to say that, darling. Duffy and I have done some work as well, but the truth is, it's better to be with a therapist that doesn't know you, because it's like going to your own sister for surgery.
Oh God, please!
Not a good idea.
No.
So she went to Sedona and did some work there.
But a lot of times there's aspects of your life that are going on, and you're just saying, why, or this doesn't even make sense to me. Nothing about it seems to be you. And so this sometimes will be able to help you put little aspects of uncertainty into perspective. To say, okay, well, now that makes sense why I like this person who is just, why am I
look at, Bill and I, our story is romantic, but not all that unique. You do read about people who've had love at first sight. I walked into where he was working, and he immediately said to me, "You make me vibrate." And I, would think of him from time to time, and he, we made that connection almost instantaneously before we got together. We thought about it. So it's sometimes that's a past life recognition.
And sometimes even in that same instance, it may be you recognize that, you felt that, and then all of a sudden, as you're thinking about it, you may remember that past life not as lovingly as you have.
Right. True.
So there may be another aspect of saying, okay, now I feel this sense of I got to flip a wall.
So my friend Duffy is an excellent writer and an excellent teacher, and is happy to come and speak to your group about any of this. So please give her a call. And
Love
Duffy, it's always nice to have you, and I'm glad your husband decided to make a surprise appearance on our camera tonight,
with the dog.
That Now listen, you guys. I have asked both Duffy and Billy to stay in heaven so that I can marry Pat McMahon in my next lifetime. I've asked all three of them to cooperate with me. They have all agreed, and that's what's happening in our next life. So we've got it planned before we get to heaven and do our in-between life.
But Bijou wants to come back with you, so that's the whole thing. Bijou wants to come back with you.
So, as always, my friend.
And by the way, that was one interesting when I went into the soul area, is I got to go see my dogs.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Do we have a minute, Billy? Sure.
Okay. When I was under, the hypnotherapist says, is there an area that you'd like to go to? Did I want to go back to my soul group? Did I want to go to the Akashic Records? Did I want to go and talk to my any of the people that were going to be talking to me about what I wanted to do, my soul planning? And I said, no, I want to go visit my animals. And the interesting thing about being under is that and I'll make this quick, is that my conscious is over here saying, what are you talking about? And I'm just throwing all this stuff out. So, as I did, so I went over and saw 2 of my dogs and my cats, and it was great.
Wow. And that's true. When you're under hypnosis, there's 2 sides of you working, the subconscious mind and the observer of you, the conscious mind. All right, guys. Well, thank you very much for your questions tonight. And if you have any more questions for us, please email them to us. And I don't know, next week, what are we doing, Bill? Is it a night of readings? Next week, I guess we're doing a night of readings, so everybody get their questions ready and either email them or give us a call. And take a look at some of the events coming up, and come and cruise with me, or join me with these ladies in Sedona. And everybody absolutely has to come to see James Van Praagh.
Yes.
And Melinda Vail.
And Melinda Vail.
On November 17th.
Hey,
thank you, everybody.
Mwah.
Good night, everybody.